Hi everybody, welcome to the webinar. My name's Catherine Maslin. I'm the Principal Naturopath and Clinic Director of Brisbane Natural Health. And in today's webinar, I'm going to be talking all about nuts and why you should be going nuts for them. So nuts are an excellent part of a healthy diet. And for those of you that are patients, you would have heard me talking about nuts kind of here or there anyway. But what I'm going to do today is just provide some clarity on that. It's not going to be a long webinar. We're talking maybe 15 minutes because I'm just going to go over the basic things that you need to know about nuts and how you can include them in your diet. So I'm going to talk about why they're healthy, which ones are best and what each individual one does, how much you should be eating and how to include them in your diet. So why go nuts about nuts? Well, for starters, they're a great source of protein, a great source of non-meat protein as well, so great for vegetarians, and also it's good not to get too much of your protein sources from meats and animal products as well, so nuts can actually help to bridge that gap a little bit. They're really high in essential fatty acids, so a great source of good fats. Some people might say that they're high in saturated fat. Nuts do contain some saturated fat, but they actually have a really good fat balance that's generally very good for you. And they're an excellent source of minerals, as we're going to see. So really a great thing to have in the diet. So, there are all kind of nuts. We've got almonds, walnuts, Brazil nuts, macadamia nuts, pecans, hazelnuts, cashews, pistachio, chestnuts. There are a few other ones that are probably less commonly known. So there's quite a lot that you've got to choose from, and each one's got their own flavour and different way that you can use it in the diet. The other thing that I really like to mention is that peanuts aren't actually nuts, they're a legume. So they don't grow on trees, they grow on kind of a legume type bush, and they actually have a different profile to nuts slightly, although they do kind of have a similar protein profile to nuts, which is why they get grouped together with them a fair bit. But peanuts aren't something that I recommend to be eating heaps of health-wise. Like, they're okay, they're quite nutritious, and if you're having them organic, they're okay as a sometimes food, but I wouldn't be having the same emphasis on the health benefits for them as I would for other nuts and seeds. So let's start with almonds, which is probably the one that most people eat, and which is quite a good thing because it's one of the better nuts to be eating. It's what we call the only alkaline nut. So nuts generally fall into what we call an acid-forming category in the body, and acid-forming foods tend to be more inflammatory. So alkaline forming foods are more anti-inflammatory. So almonds are a great way to reduce inflammation in the body. They're an excellent source of calcium and magnesium, a really good source of vitamin E. You can use almond flour in gluten-free cooking to substitute, so that's works quite well. And almond milk is a great milk alternative. So almond milk is really easily made just by soaking almonds in water and then blending it up and then straining off the fibre. And almond milk's an excellent, really alkaline, high in calcium milk alternative. So the next one is walnuts, and walnuts are one of my favourites because they're an excellent source of a plant omega-3. So you can see how they look like little brains, and they're actually really good brain food, and that's because of the omega-3 and other fatty acid content in them. They're a fantastic source of vitamin E. Now, the thing about walnuts is that they can go rancid really easily. So sometimes when you buy them in the supermarket or elsewhere, they might taste kind of bitter, and walnuts shouldn't really have that bitter taste. And if they do, it just means that the oils in there have gone rancid, and you probably shouldn't eat them. So sometimes it helps to go to an actual proper nut shop rather than from the supermarket or something like that, somewhere that's got a higher turnover of these nuts, which means that they're going to end up being a little bit fresher. Macadamia nuts are native to Australia, so they're our only kind of Australian nut that's consumed regularly. They're super high in calcium, and they're an excellent source of vitamin E, but also folic acid. They're high in good fats, so they do have quite a high saturated fat percentage, but I wouldn't worry about it. They've also got a lot of monounsaturates in there. They've got a generally really good nourishing fats in there, and they're really good for kind of raw cooking and using them as a cream substitute in sweets and things. So you can actually make a really nice macadamia nut cream by soaking the macadamia nuts and then blending them in a blender or a food processor to make kind of like a thick cream, and that can be a really nice alternative to your dairy cream. As is cashew cream. So cashews are a little bit different. Again, they are actually a nut, but they have kind of a protein profile that's a little bit more like a legume. So it's quite interesting. Now, the way that they actually get them out of the shells is that they cook them, and they actually mostly come from Asia, where they kind of harvest them and they cook them in these massive woks. And the cooking process actually releases the cashew out of the shell, and it sort of cooks it in the process. So when you buy cashews in the shop, they're not truly raw. So if you are having a raw food food diet, you need to kind of be aware of that. You can get truly raw cashews. They're quite expensive and not that widely available, but they still have excellent health benefits even though they're cooked to get out of their shell. They're an excellent source of iron. So really good to not look at just red meat for iron. Other plant sources are fantastic, and cashews can fill that void there. So I like to use cashews in smoothies because they actually blend really easily. They're one of the softer nuts. So even if your blender's not that fantastic, you'll be able to make cashew cream in there. Excellent to throw into stir fries and stews. And I used to use it in things like fried rice dishes and things just to give it a little bit more protein and crunch. And really good in Asian dishes. So the other thing is you can do a cashew cream, as I was mentioning. And if you make a cashew cream, and then leave it and blend it and then leave that overnight, it'll actually turn into a cashew yogurt. And the reason for that is because on the outside of a cashew is a bacteria, and that bacteria will naturally ferment the yogurt overnight. So it's a fantastic probiotic food that you can add into the diet, particularly if you are dairy sensitive. Brazil nuts are one of the ones that people often say, which ones are those? So there they are. They're those big kind of oblong nuts. They're quite large. And I recommend them really frequently, particularly for people with any type of like chronic disease or fertility problems, because they're the best natural source of selenium with approximately 40 micrograms per nut. So to put that in perspective, supplements that we have over the counter can't exceed 50 micrograms. So that's a significant amount of selenium. They're also a great source of magnesium. So magnesium is obviously really good for stress. When we're stressed, we chew through our magnesiums. If you're getting muscle cramps and things like that, it's good to up the Brazil nuts. And they're best eaten raw. So like walnuts, they actually have a problem with freshness. They can go rancid really easily. So again, if you're eating a Brazil nut and it tastes kind of bitter and a bit yucky, then it means that it's probably just off. The oils have gone rancid, and again, you shouldn't eat it. So an interesting note is that Brazil nuts can't actually be harvested, like they can't grow them commercially. They've tried to, it doesn't really work. So all Brazil nuts are harvested from the rainforest and around the Amazon. So what that means then for the nut is that it's going to have a higher nutritional profile because it's in its natural environment, but also it's quite an environmental food because the Brazil nut trees are in amongst the rainforest. It means they're not going to go in and cut down the rainforest because it'll ruin their industry. So it's quite a good food economically and for in the environment as well. So they're kind of your major nuts. The other nuts, like things like pistachios and pecans, they have similar type properties. Like they all tend to have a bit of calcium and magnesium. They all tend to be pretty high in minerals. And they've all actually got a decent dose of B vitamins in them too. So excellent food to include in the diet. So it is good to eat your nuts raw, okay? So, and this is because of the oil content and also the minerals a little bit. If you toast them, or you have them roasted, it actually destroys the good oils they contain. So like I was saying with that rancidity, when you taste it and it's bitter, that means the oils have turned bad. Now, if you put that nut under heat, all of those good beneficial oils are going to actually be kind of oxidized, and it means that you're not going to get the best benefit from it. So likewise, if you're using like a nut oil, like macadamia oil or even almond oil, you want to make sure that it's cold pressed and that it's not heat extracted or chemical extracted. So always look on the bottle for any oils that you buy. It needs to be cold pressed. So nuts can actually be a little bit difficult to digest. They're quite hard. They're one of those things that if you don't chew them properly, they can just come out the other end. So it is really important that if you do have any digestive problems, to activate your nuts. So it's quite easy. All you need to do is soak them in filtered water overnight, and then you want to throw that water out and rinse them. And that's because in the water there can be enzyme inhibitors which can stop you from breaking down the nuts properly. So what you can do then is you can just eat them like that. They're not going to be the same as a dry nut because they're going to lose that hardness. But you can store them in a paper bag in the fridge, which dries them out a little bit and gives them a bit more crunch. The next step is you can actually dehydrate them, and then that means they'll actually store longer like normal nuts, and they'll taste like normal nuts, except they've got those fantastic properties of being activated. So to do that, you could use a dehydrator, or even you can use an oven on the lowest setting where you kind of lie them out and just have the door open, but it does take quite a bit of time that way. So the other thing you can do if you're activating them is to try soaking them in salty water, which gives you salted nuts. So if you use a really nice salt like a Himalayan salt or a Celtic sea salt, it means you get the benefits of the micro minerals from the salt as well as the minerals from the nuts. So that's quite a good thing to do as well, and really tasty. So I really believe that raw nuts are an essential component to any healthy diet. So, and I do screen patients, myself and our other team members, just to make sure that you are getting these components in your diet, because they do have such a broad range of minerals that if you're eating some nuts every single day, it means that it does tick off quite a few boxes for us. And of course, it's a great source of protein in those good oils as well. So that's all for this evening. I'll give you guys a couple of minutes if you have any questions. So while I'm kind of waiting for those to come in to see if anybody's got anything they want to ask, I'll just kind of mention to you how I like to eat nuts and how often. So I think you should have probably a small handful of nuts every day and to mix it up a little bit. So almonds are always a good one to include. Walnuts are great, particularly if you're not eating much fish or getting much omega-3 through the diet. And then Brazil nuts are another one of my kind of top ones that have heaps of antioxidants in them. So if you aim for a small handful a day, that'll kind of cover you off to get that nutrition that you need. So I like to eat them just kind of on their own, so either activated, sometimes non-activated, depending how busy I am. But also you remembering that you can throw them into salads. I quite often like to throw nuts and seeds just into salads to give them a bit of crunch and to improve the mineral content. You can put them into patties, you can put them in your breakfast. I think it's really important that if you're having any type of muesli or cereal or porridge that you have some kind of nut and seed on there, which will help to bring down the glycemic index but also add protein to it. And you can also cook with them as well, but just be wary with cooking is that you don't want to use super high temperatures because, again, it's going to damage the oils. And probably more stable nuts like almonds rather than walnuts are going to be better for cooking as well. So no questions from you guys today. If you are watching a replay of the webinar, do remember that you can put your questions there and they'll get emailed to me and I'll reply to you. Thanks for listening, guys, and I'll catch you on the next one.